People ask me to save him.
People ask you for hope. That's what he does. Superman.
You inspire everyone. You inspire me and our children every day. And not because you can fly or because of your strength, it's because of your heart.
Yes, Superman and Lois, have you failed already?
Welcome to a new video on the NEGAYO channel. Friends, as we well know, the Superman and Lois series is now in its final stretch, ready to say goodbye to us forever. And just like me, you're probably going to miss this beautiful adaptation that CW dared to make about our favorite hero. So, while we wait for the final episode, how about a video about the history and best moments of the first season? If we do well with this and get good likes and comments, I guarantee we'll continue talking about all the details of the other seasons. We all know the story of Superman, the last son of Krypton who came to Earth and was raised by a loving couple of farmers. Soon this boy discovered that he was different from everyone else. But despite that, he lived a normal life in Smallville, surrounded by people who loved him. Following Jonathan Kent's death, Clark set out on a lone quest to find answers about himself. The crystal that was with him on the ship he arrived on became the Fortress of Solitude. In this place, Kal-El finally met his biological father, Jor-El, and learned everything he needed to know. Clark had always known that he must use his abilities to help others, and when the time came, Jor-El did nothing but encourage him to become the champion of the Earth. One day, he unexpectedly returned to his home on the farm after being away for years. Life went on for everyone else, and therefore, he lost the woman he had loved then, Lana Lang. After telling his mother all the things he learned in the fortress and that he was ready to present himself as a hero, Martha told Clark about a dream she had, one where she saw him flying high in the sky. She had designed a very special suit for him after that, and just like Yore did, she also knew what her son's destiny was. Superman was born. News about the flying man didn't take long to spread throughout the city. And this ended up guiding Clark to what would be the perfect job to maintain two completely different lives. He met Lois Lane and the chemistry was immediate. They teamed up covering news that no one else was investigating. And as Superman's fame grew across the planet, Lois inevitably fell in love with this guy. We are
dating for a few months now. I know he's a nerd, but I love him.
How beautiful. She fell in love with a man, not the hero. She's definitely the one. Eventually, Clark revealed the truth to Lois. As time passed, they got married, started a family, and had twins named Jordan and Jonathan. Superman had achieved what not every superhero has managed to: happiness and stability. 15 years later, Metropolis's champion is still active, avoiding all kinds of disasters on Earth, saving space shuttles and nuclear plants. Unfortunately, this has brought him certain problems in his life as Clark Kent, because his long absences mainly affect his son Jordan. The most unbearable character this season, along with this fool, but we'll talk about him later. It's also important to mention that the kids have no idea that their father is none other than Superman himself. They've never seen him without glasses, I suppose. Wow.
You're quite a good Superman. Superman is boring.
Everything suddenly changes in this family's life when Clark is fired from his job at the Daily Planet. Ever since a certain Morgan Edge bought the company, the cutbacks have been inevitable. Things get even worse when on that very day, Clark receives the news that his mother has passed away. Thank you for everything, Martha Kent. We will always be grateful that she understood Clark for having to leave her alone, that she made one of the best homemade suits seen in a live action, and that she also encouraged her son to be the hero the world needed. Mrs. Kent was really very loved in Smallville, so much so that they even made a plaque in her honor, on a bench where she used to sit and chat with everyone. At the funeral, we meet the boring Cushing family, Lana Lang, her husband Kyle, and their two daughters, Sarah and the other one. It's unclear what her name is, and at times it feels like she might not even be real. And Jordan likes Sarah, and since he's an expert at hiding it, I bet you didn't notice and I didn't tell you. But moving on to other things. It's been a long time since Clark visited the farm, and he's slowly starting to notice that things aren't the same as they used to be. The town also appears to be declining. He soon finds out that the infamous businessman Morgan Edge plans to reopen the mines in Smallville. Some foolish people like Kyle support him, while Clark and Lloyd know firsthand that this will not bring anything good. Meanwhile, these kids started getting anxious because they had been without internet for about 2 minutes, so they went into the barn to look for the router to restart it. This is where the unfortunate accident that is going to shape this entire first season happens, and it's that Jordan and Jonathan end up losing their lives. Or at least, that's what should have happened. Impossibly, both emerged completely unscathed. So this meant that either both have powers, or even worse, only one of them possesses them. Lois insists that it's time to reveal the big secret to the boys, and both she and Clark were convinced that it was Jonathan who was manifesting powers, so dealing with Jordan's attitude wouldn't be easy. The man remained angry about surviving the accident that should have been fatal, insisting that something was amiss. He went back to the barn to look for answers, and when he finally finds a huge clue in the form of a spaceship, he gets angry. Anyway, Jordan was very upset because something had been hidden from him all his life, and Clark had no choice but to reveal his big secret. Which annoyed him more, but I think we can let it slide this time. It's mostly understandable, right? He starts crying because he believes he doesn't have the powers, but then cries even more, which is confusing. When, spoiler alert, it turns out later that he is the one with the powers. The point is that both sons felt deceived. At first, Clark didn't know what to do about it, but as Superman, he had to keep investigating. Another nuclear plant was being attacked.
I know you're here, and I know you can't see me as fast as you think.
Following a subject in armor who started to give him quite a lot of trouble, even to the point of almost killing him by knowing the Kryptonian perfectly well. Right, it's in those moments where Jordan gets into trouble for kissing this girl who had a boyfriend and never mentioned it. A brawl erupted at the party. Due to the stress, Jordan discovered his powers. And he almost killed everyone. Here, they wouldn't let Superman die in peace, and he had to miraculously recover to go save his sons. There were no fatalities, but Jordan was too upset by what happened. And as I said before, he's going to cry in his room for being the chosen twin. Half Kryptonian, Clark understands that everyone needed family time and a remote place where Jordan could control his new abilities. So he convinces Lois to move to the farm, and for a moment it seems like things will be more or less okay. At least until this guy attacks again, or until Jordan throws another tantrum.
Where is he?
Where is what, the kryptonite?
Did the baby have another bad day?
Hey,
You shut up, no, Jordan? No. I'm sick of your nonsense, Jordan. The world doesn't revolve around you?
Look, did both things happen at the same time? The solution for Jordan is to take him to the Fortress of Solitude to learn more about Krypton and let his anger pass. Meanwhile, Jonathan starts getting bullied at school by Sarah's friends and boyfriend because of the party incident. And little by little from here, we will start to notice how this character begins to feel more and more left behind due to the lack of attention he suffers. Everything goes wrong for the poor guy, even his girlfriend breaking up with him over the phone. The armored subject attacked again, this time the defense center, which couldn't defend itself and had to call on Superman. The enemy entered without problems and approached Sam as if he knew him, saying that the Kryptonian was a threat to the planet. Before he could say anything else, Superman managed to charge at him, knocking him out of the fight, although unfortunately, the armor was being controlled remotely. The villain's reason for being here was to steal kryptonite. Sam, how much kryptonite do they have?
Let's just say, there's a reason it's not found anywhere else in the world.
Are we missing some Lois Lane adventures and what has happened to her so far? Ever since she arrived at the farm, she's been suspicious of Morgan Edge's true intentions in Smallville. So when she attends a meeting about this businessman's plans in the town, Lane doesn't hesitate to question him in front of everyone about his multiple failures in other towns. She also chooses to write an article about Morgan, despite him being her boss.
Morgan Edge is a corporate vampire. Did you forget that Edge owns the planet?
This is what I admire about Lois Lane, her unwavering dedication to a good story once she finds it.
Lois's article wasn't necessarily good for Edge's reputation, and as soon as she found out that her news was completely altered, omitting the controversial details against Morgan, the famous reporter decided to quit the newspaper. It wasn't much of a problem finding a new job as Smallville's editor. Chrissy Pippo was a complete fan of Lois Lane, and she had no problem hiring her for the Gazette, in addition to agreeing to publish the original article. And well, despite how soap opera-like this series is, there's still time to see Superman doing Superman things. Like when he saves a collapsing bridge and takes the opportunity to greet an unknown fisherman. We see him confront Kilgrave and his army. We see him on the news lifting ships and saving planes, and every now and then he also faces his natural enemies par excellence, the trains. Superman even visited Mazatlan, Mexico. Imagine that. I saw him fly over my house, but no one believes me. It's a shame they shot at him. Long live Mexico. Perhaps a bit less interesting, but we also see Clark doing Clark things like fixing his house, flying around it, lifting tractors, gathering food to donate, training his son, fixing his truck with heat vision, or having to work for free as a coach's assistant just to be close to his kids. Because Jordan the Fool suddenly felt like joining the team even knowing that he can't control his powers and could kill someone. Not to mention that this fool took away the only thing that made Jonathan special. You know what? This guy puts me in such a bad mood that we better look for another scene that makes us forget him. One like this where the most powerful man in the world pretends he can't carry a cooler. Yes, definitely, this is humility. Meanwhile, after Lois's article on Morgan Edge, a woman approaches her, reporting that her son Derek Powell vanished long ago while employed by the businessman. And although it was still too early to know if this information is true, that burned car of Lois lets her know that it is. Indeed, she is getting into dangerous territory. Moreover, when she goes to meet with that lady to discuss things in more detail, a man with super strength was already waiting for the reporter. Obviously, Lane couldn't be too much against the guy, but fortunately, Superman is always there to save her. This man had not only attempted to kill Lois, but also the mother of the missing person while making it appear as a suicide, and this in order to prevent her from revealing more about the disappearance of her son. Lois and Chrissy know that they are now in something much bigger, as they have discovered that there are more missing people who worked for Edge. And now the thing is, why does a super powerful guy work for the businessman? How did this woman get heat vision? And what is Morgan doing with the people who disappear? I have a lot of questions. It doesn't take long before the Gazette receives a more formal visit from Leslie Larr, threatening with $1 million lawsuit, which means that Lois Lane is on the right track. And even though she has everything to lose, the reporter is not intimidated by Morgan.
Let me tell you what's going to happen. Sue me and I'll countersue you. Your background would come to light in court and it wouldn't be good for you or your brand.
Yes, you do look like a Lois Lane, and to get rid of some of our questions once and for all, what Morgan Edge was looking for in the Smallville mines was kryptonite, then kryptonite. Out of nowhere, the guy supposedly disappeared by Morgan shows up. He claims to have had an accident outside of work that caused him to lose his memory, and that's it. There's no more conspiracy story about Edge. The lady was unfazed when a powerful man tried to intimidate her at her home. There was nothing more to say about it. She got her son back, and for her that's enough. Although everything gets weird again when this guy destroys an entire building using heat vision. After discovering Derek's presence at the scene, Lois promptly resumes investigating him. But something strange happens when this supposed reporter named Marcus Bridgewater approaches her with the intention of helping her. The detail is that this is the same guy in the armor who had been giving Superman trouble. But of course the reporter doesn't know this yet.
I will start with the improvements to his armor.
Derek Pugwell was dating Leslie Larr and was found by Chris, and even a basement where they put him into a strange machine, who knows for what. When she informs Lois, Superman immediately goes to investigate. Now it's known that Derek, in addition to heat vision, can also fly. Even stranger is that when Cal manages to reach him, it's as if another person is speaking instead of Derek. It's a shame that this guy Marcus has been following Superman all the time. And by shooting him with this projectile, it prevents the hero from getting more information. And for some unknown reason, Derek ends up committing suicide. Lloyd knew that Derek's powers and Morgan's interest in the mines were related. And because Superman couldn't be seen too much in Smallville to avoid suspicion, she had to find a way to get into that place without being arrested. Marcus gets a fake inspector pass, allowing them access to the place. And even though Lloyd knew that this reporter was hiding something, his curiosity against Morgan was much stronger. And yes, they were successful finding what Morgan kept secret, the 10 kryptonite. Unfortunately, they were discovered by Leslie and her deadly eyes. By sheer chance, this guy Marcus had an anti-kryptonite device in his backpack. Yes, he managed to knock it down, but this was already too much for Lois. She was sure that Marcus was not a reporter, but he refused to reveal anything. And because an emergency arises with Jordan and Jonathan involved in a fight, Lane must leave immediately, leaving this interrogation pending. The fight is yet another misfortune that befalls Jonathan. Jordan was eager to face off against the Metropolis team, comprised of the same guys who bullied him at school for the past few days. With his newfound strength, he sought revenge. Smallville's victory ended in a confrontation off the field. Jonathan, trying to prevent his brother from committing murder, ended up with a broken arm. This only serves to tell us two things in this video. Number 1, that Jordan is the worst character in the series, and number 2, that the writers of this adaptation know Superman perfectly well. The first time I appeared in Metropolis as Superman, several discussions arose about handling someone with powers like mine. And it took me a while to realize that people were afraid of what I could do to them. 20 years later, and every time I use my powers, that trust is tested always. These dialogues are essential. After learning Marcus lied about his identity, Lois persuades Clark to assist her investigation. So, while she meets with this guy and starts questioning him, Clark looks for as many clues as possible in the suspect's trailer. The man refuses to provide any additional information about himself, and he just warns Lois that Morgan Edge is creating an army with which he intends to conquer the world. Clearly, Lois has little trust in Marcus, and since she starts to see activity in the mines, the reporter decides to leave to follow the trail of the 10 Kryptonite. Could that man be Lex Luthor? The plan is foiled by the alleged Marcus, who steals the shipment, leaving them clueless about the Kryptonite's intended destination. And even worse, all of this was part of a trap, and now Leslie Lore is listening to them. In the end, they manage to make a deal. Marcus demands to meet Superman, and only to him would he reveal the whole truth. Lois agrees to introduce them, but only in exchange for keeping the Kryptonite 10. His fingerprints. Are you very good at this? When the fingerprints are analyzed by the Department of Defense, the results say they belong to someone who died a long time ago. Someone named John Henry Irons. Superman appears in front of the fake Marcos. He said he just wanted to save the world, but not from Morgan Edge, but from Kal-El himself. The scenario was a complete trap. Superman is mercilessly beaten by Henry, and since Leslie had not stopped spying on Irons, she took this moment of distraction to move more cargo. Undetected, Clark's family knew he was in danger. Jordan had managed to hear his father's screams somewhere, so Jonathan didn't hesitate to take the truck. And now a bit of context. This man hails from a parallel world where Kryptonians, including Superman, invaded. He lost his wife, Lois Lane, the mother of his daughter. The brave reporter worked until her final moments to expose the Kryptonians' weakness to everyone. To protect humanity, John and his daughter constructed armor that could match the enemy's capabilities. He had fought with Sam Lane in many battles, and he had vowed for his life, for everything he lost, that one day he would kill Superman. He was about to achieve it with a single red energy missile, but before knowing if his plan would work, he arrived in this world without explanation through a dimensional portal that appeared in front of him.
You see, Kal-El?
You are not the man of steel I am.
Jonathan took care of destroying the lights. Henry was left defenseless. Despite Clark's rage, Lois's voice calmed him down. The Department of Defense locked Henry up. Moreover, 10 Kryptonite was extracted from the mines, and Morgan had found new candidates to experiment with later on. And since too many strange things were happening around the Kent family, Clark and Lois decide to be completely transparent with their children and reveal what is happening with Henry Irons. Now, with the family more united and without secrets, Jonathan and Lois are in charge of investigating Henry's strange van while Superman personally interrogates the subject. Irons kept insisting that it wouldn't be long before Kal-El turned against humanity, and he held firm to his promise to murder him. Up until this point, he refused to say more until they brought Lois Lane, who discovered that in another reality, she was Henry's wife, which she found strange and uncomfortable. Unsurprisingly, Superman was upset to discover he was a murderer. If only he knew the full story. Anyway, even though Sam tried to also interrogate Henry, the guy was stubborn. That soon an army of Kryptonians would start invading the planet, and being them, the people of Kal-El East would end up betraying humanity. When Henry is sent to his cell, he discovers that a Kryptonian had already infiltrated the department. This individual went straight to where the Kryptonite weapon prototypes were stored. Henry triggered an alarm, and despite the danger, Superman fought the threat. Just then, Lois arrived at this place because she also had some questions for Irons and only found chaos throughout the department. This very broken Superman held up the fight despite having breathed enough kryptonite to kill him 10 times, although it was Henry who put an end to the fight. In fact, if not stopped by the army, he would have also killed Superman. Lois Lane, more than the army, successfully reasoned with him. In the other world, they were married with a daughter named Natalie, which is the same name Clark and Lois had planned for their daughter, who died before birth. This whole matter is a mess, I know. Since the superpowered soldier suddenly changed his personality completely, just like Derek Powell in his final moments. Superman believes that Morgan Edge found a way not only to give powers to ordinary people, but to transplant the consciousness of Kryptonians into human hosts. Therefore, if it's true that a war is near, they decide to let Henry Irons go, hoping to count on him later on. Quickly, Lois begins to investigate Morgan more deeply before it's too late. This individual was already taking advantage of people who needed jobs to use them in his experiments. Lana Lang, who had agreed to work with Edge to recruit talent a few days ago, began to notice strange things happening around her. So she also helped Lois in her investigation, reporting everything she saw. Morgan, frustrated with Lois Lane, activated his minions to attack her at her home. Luckily, Sam Lane was nearby because he was monitoring Superman's health after what happened at the Defense Department. And it turns out that Jonathan had stolen some weapons from Henry's truck just in case. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you why I didn't like this guy. Well, he was one of the main defenders of Morgan Edge from the beginning of the series. That is despite the fact that the businessman had already ruined other towns and fired Clark Kent and then caused Lois to resign. The fool believed Edge would save Smallville, treating Lois, Clark and Lana badly. No way, it seemed like he was even in love with Morgan. This guy, Mr. Edge, what if I build a new court? Mr. Edge? I'm a big fan of his money, he looks more handsome today than yesterday, Mr. Edge. Of course you can hook up with my wife if you want, in fact I'll give her to you. And that's how the damn series went, until one day he personally went to ask Morgan for a better job. So Kyle had also been used in experiments, but before achieving his goal, Superman appears to save the day. The army arrives at the farm, but the attackers had already taken off. Thanks to Kyle, we have a better understanding of what happens to the test subjects. And when he gets home, he mentions that he doesn't know what happened to him tonight, he has blurry memories and his body hurts. And in this way, Lana discovers that her husband agreed to get involved in whatever Morgan was doing with his volunteers. Digging deeper into Lois's investigation, thanks to Chrissy, they discover that Morgan was exclusively looking for people from Smallville. Leslie Larr, the subject who tried to kill Lois, was more resistant to his experiments for some reason. And also the new recruits like Kyle, who could perfectly control their powers. Unlike the late Derek Powell and the soldier who attacked in the Defense Department, who were unstable. This was explainable. Smallville was the sole location of 10 kryptonite. And since the town had been exposed to it for many years, the citizens were more tolerant to the process that Morgan subjected them to. The mystery was solved, and just at that moment, Morgan Edge calls Superman using Lois's locator, revealing himself as a genuine Kryptonian. And also brother of Kal-El himself. I don't understand anything. You are not my brother. Yes, I am Kal-El. It's time for context. Tal-Rho, son of Zeta-Rho and Lara Lorvan, was sent to Earth after the first warning from Ur-El about Krypton's impending destruction. This happened even years before Kal-El was born. Tal was sent with the purpose of keeping Krypton alive on Earth. Human lives did not interest him, but shortly after he was captured and locked up for much of his life, until he managed to escape and build his fortress in the middle of the desert where he resumed communication with his father. No.
You don't need anyone, son. Is that clear? Yes, sir.
Despite this sad origin story, Kal couldn't allow his supposed brother to continue his plans. Before he could act, Superman was stunned, possibly giving Tal time to escape. Clark was quite confused and told his family about this. He also went to Ur-El to seek answers. Here it is revealed that Lara Lorvan had created a medium called Eradicator to preserve Kryptonian minds to continue existing, just like Ur-El does, in the Fortress of Solitude. But Zeta-Rho, Tal's father, was the one who intended to conquer other worlds. By the way, Lois went to visit Lana once Kyle was located at his home. His second personality activates, but Lane was already prepared, letting the soldiers take care of the rest. The next day they explained the whole matter to Lana about what happens with her husband and the other recruits. Smallville becomes an area guarded by the army, and the search to locate Edge's subjects begins to expand. Quickly, they found a scientist who was kidnapped a long time ago by Morgan for his evil plans. He helps them willingly in their search for Lara Lorvan's consciousness, the Eradicator's creator, and to explain to them how to return people to normal. And well, since Lana felt guilty for having recruited all those people, for Morgan, she volunteered for the process. Luckily, all goes smoothly. Lana, now Lara, recognizes her son. She not only helps him with the Eradicator problem but also talks to him about how, before marrying Joriel, she separated from Zetaru because of his conquering ideals, and now a little more calm. She is also happy to learn that her son is happy and has started his own family. This Superman deserved a moment of joy after almost dying like 3 times this season. Kal-El went up to Such, barely hearing it in the distance. The villain still didn't understand why his brother had chosen humanity over the Kryptonians. And even though Superman defended Earth, arguing that not all people were evil, Tal was more than determined to fulfill his purpose, with or without his brother's help. The activated subjects immediately attacked Superman, intending to annihilate him. They are beings who don't deserve to die.
Inferior to us? Calno, they are not. They are different. Make your decision, us or the humans.
It's over the time. Is it ready yet? Despite the danger, the hero does not back down. And the only way to reverse the Eradicator's process was by releasing a large amount of energy into the artifact.
Dad?
The citizens have returned to normal, but the bad news is that both Morgan Edge and Superman are now missing.
How did you find out about this?
I can't wait to tell my dad about the wedding. He's going to be so excited.
You must go now, son. In a life full of memories, there's no one more special than becoming a father.
Tal invaded Superman's mind during his collapse, intending to use the information to negotiate the hero's surrender and prevent further interference with his plans. And despite having everything against him, Clark still thought he could reason with his brother to leave humanity in peace. I am here, brother.
Join me, I can't allow this to...
I love you, son. During the fight, the Fortress of Solitude was almost destroyed, and this only ended when Superman fell unconscious on the ground. Tal-Rho came to the farm just to mock the life that Kal had chosen to protect over a new Krypton. Jordan's powers were nothing compared to Edge's powers. And when there were no more alternatives or strength to keep fighting, did Superman agree to surrender in order to protect his own? Clark was taken to Zeta-Rho, where they used the Eradicator on him. The war that John Henry Irons so feared was already here, and he was warned by Lois Lane herself. No one knew where Morgan had gone. They had no way of tracking him. But Jonathan had the great idea to motivate Jordan to use his super hearing and find their father. And even though the boy still didn't master any of his abilities, he still decided to try hard. Superman continued to resist Zod's consciousness for hours. The memories of the people he loved kept him fighting to the limit, until he finally managed to scream for help. Jonathan's plan had worked, managing to get valuable information. But the bad news is that Sam and Henry start to conspire to kill Superman, believing that the hero was already part of the army that would annihilate humanity. Because of this, Lois has no choice but to reveal her secret. So that finally Irons understands that Superman has a great reason to fight for Earth and not give up despite all the obstacles he must face. The army managed to locate Tal's fortress. Just as General Zod's consciousness had finally taken over Superman, Irons arrived at the place, coming face to face with a corrupt hero who attacked powerfully. The armor was not going to hold up long enough, but Lois Lane's voice was able to bring Clark back. And even though he asked Henry to kill him before losing control again, John regretted it at the last moment and tried to find another way to help Superman, telling him about his family and that he should keep fighting for those he loved. The power of love works, and Zod's consciousness disappeared. Morgan escaped before being captured, but Iron's lethal missile took down the villain before he could execute his plans. Superman returned home safe and sound. The family is now on good terms with Henry and has allowed him to stay with them temporarily. And as for Morgan Edge, he will remain locked up in the Defense Department. In fact, Leslie Lore showed up soon after, and fortunately, she was easy to kill. Well done. Thank you. After a brief period of peace in the lives of our protagonists, which lasted like I don't know, half a chapter, something strange began to happen with Morgan Edge. The kryptonite seemed to have no more effect on him, the cameras went off, an energy explosion destroyed his cell, and just like that, without further ado, Tal-Rho was back on the loose, and Superman had to get back to work immediately, although unfortunately he was not able to find the villain. It turns out that this guy had absorbed the Eradicator within himself. Before being hit by the red solar energy missile, and to reactivate the device, he had to gather energy from the sun. Practically, Morgan now possessed all the consciousnesses of the inhabitants of Krypton. For 3 weeks, Morgan remained missing until he suddenly attacked the defense center to free Leslie Lore. Sam Lane was informed about this, and immediately Superman and Irons managed to locate him in the center of Metropolis. Somehow there were now more Kryptonians on Morgan's side ready to take the city, and inevitably, the battle for Metropolis began. Although the forecast did not look favorable for the heroes, Lois began to warn through the news about the danger they were facing. The biggest problem is that Morgan was somehow protected by an impenetrable energy field. And when hit by the shockwave, Edge took the moment to escape and appear right in front of Sam Lane and the boys. Morgan took Jordan to impersonate his father, and as much as Superman tried to find his son, he failed in the attempt. Zeta-Ra had taken over Jordan.
Well done now. Let's get started.
The hours kept passing and Clark and Lois got no answer about the whereabouts of their son. The new plan of Tal-Rho and his father had begun, and nobody knew what would happen this time. Superman's desperation to find Jordan reached such a point that he saw no other alternative but to shout his name from the highest point in the sky. Fortunately, the call was answered. Jordan was still internally fighting against Zeta-Rho, and therefore Superman was not able to harm him. Meanwhile, Morgan Edge appeared above a Smallville full of people, enraged and confused by everything that had happened in the last few weeks. In this case, it was Irons who tried to confront Tal, but the villain's new powers protected him against any attack. With these abilities, he brought more subjects to life, and once this phase of Plan Z was completed, he also escaped. Morgan Edge had become practically invincible. And yet, even though the army even ordered the evacuation of the entire town of Smallville for fear that he would return, the people did not surrender to the threat. Clark, Lois, Henry Irons, the Cassetti, and the extremely boring Cushing family insisted on helping with anything, while Superman continued flying around the world trying to find any enemy trace. When the small Kryptonian army recharged their strength to the maximum, they landed in the mines to use the rest of Kryptonite 10 and finally release all the consciousnesses of the Eradicator. The uproar was detected by Superman, who, accompanied by Henry, launched into the final battle. When Jordan was knocked out of combat, Henry took him to Lois in the hope of being able to recover him, just as had happened with Superman before. He used the same device with which Tal broke into Kal-El's memories. Zeta-Rho seemed to have taken absolute control of Jordan. He even immediately noticed what Lois was trying to do. Because of this, Zeta woke the boy up. And even though Jonathan was prepared for the worst, this was not enough to stop his brother. Even so, Lois was able to find Jordan trapped in the depths of his mind. And with pure scolding, as it should be, she forced him to fight to overcome Zeta-Rho's will. Did it work? Smallville remained damaged from an alien invasion, but the powerful Superman and Irons successfully defeated the small Kryptonian army. Tal-Rho was about to unleash all the power of the Eradicator on the entire world, but fortunately he was stopped in time. With a red solar energy impact, the armor had exhausted all its power, and Henry was saved by his friend before hitting the ground. And now you're probably wondering, how did Superman retain his powers after also being hit by the red solar energy? I'm not sure, but if Superman is happy, then I'm happy too. Smallville was rebuilt following the tragedies Morgan caused since his arrival. Superman, He revealed the whole truth about his brother about the 10 kryptonite and that the goal of such was to replace human minds with Kryptonian ones. And yes, maybe from today people would fear more the existence of the hero and what his race is capable of doing. Despite being unable to control his fears, Superman vowed to keep fighting and doing what's right. Just like the people of this city who, instead of shattering, rose again stronger and more hopeful than ever. The town returned to normal after all these mysteries were finally cleared up. Wait, does injustice exist in this reality? I have many questions about this. I didn't have much time to discuss Jonathan, but in my view, he was the best character of Season 1. With all that issue of having to deal with losing everything he wanted in order to protect his brother, he made many decisions in favor of always helping others. Though he occasionally erred, not knowing how to handle the burden of being the brother. Without superpowers, he always knew how to recognize his mistakes and move forward, earning him an honorable mention. Another interesting thing is that, although Superman didn't like at all that the army stored kryptonite in case they had to kill him, by the end of the series, he reflected that he could be susceptible to unpredictable threats or that one day someone much worse than that could appear. Either way, even though Lois didn't like the idea and knew her husband was the kindest person in the world, Clark had already made the decision that he was okay with this because humanity had the right to defend itself. He would continue fighting for truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, hoping to regain people's trust one day. By the way, do you remember that Yorl's crystal was destroyed? Well, Clark decided to keep its remains and became sad when observing his useless and shattered fortress. All because of the battle with his brother. But it's okay, as the family that loves him will always be there for him. And together they paid tribute to the memory of Yor-El, the one who sent his son to be the champion of our planet. Without a doubt, an emotional moment that lasted like, what can I tell you, 2 minutes. An unknown ship crashed right on the farm and the crew member turned out to be Natalie? Spoiler alert, will there be much more drama in the following chapters, and this is how this story ends. Subscribe so you don't miss new content and follow me on social media where I sometimes post things. For my part, I have nothing else to tell you. Total thanks if you made it to this part of the video. See you soon, friends. My name is Alex for the Nekacho channel. See you later.